tonight we begin a special series, America's Schools in Crisis. We take a look at the problems our schools are facing, from massive budget cuts across the country to the debate over what we teach our children. We'll cover the showdown in Texas tonight about textbooks that critics say whitewash history. And in Chicago, the controversy over what to do with kids in failing schools. The nation's broken schools. Do you just close the bad ones or try to save them and make them better? And most importantly, what about the kids? Earlier, I spoke with Geoffrey, who is president and CEO of Harlem Children's Zone, and CNN contributor Bill Bennett, who did serve as education secretary in the Reagan administration. Take a listen. Geoffrey, let me start with you here. In the piece that viewers just saw, Chicago moved a child between failing schools, and that was supposed to help him, and it actually ended up hurting him because it caused so much disruption. Does that show that when we try something new in our schools sometimes that we are ultimately carrying out an experiment of sorts on our kids?
Well, I think that under some circumstances, you would say, well, the experiment hurt this particular child and maybe some other kids, and should we do it? But here's what I got from that piece. The idea was to send this child from a failing school into a better school. There were no better schools. The schools were lousy. So where you have a situation where all the schools are lousy, we have a real crisis.
Bill Arne Duncan, who of course is now the Secretary of Education, came up with this alternate plan to keep the failing schools open but replace them with new teachers and administrators. Do you think that should be kind of a nationwide model?
Well, maybe. It all depends. I agree very much with Geoffrey. There's no point in continuing to do the same things over and over again that have failed and expect anything other than massive failure. Try things that work. The only thing I'd say different from Geoffrey, and it doesn't disagree, but I hope he will regard as adding on, is we do have some sense of what works. What he has done has worked. The Harlem Village Academy with Deborah Kinney has worked. The KIPP schools work. It's not as if we're operating in some arcane part of human existence, discovery on some foreign planet. These are our children. We do have some sense of how to educate them, how to hold people accountable in the schools for their education, and we have learned some things.
So Geoffrey, what is it? What's the secret sauce? I mean, there's so much focus on getting rid of bad teachers. Explain to us, is that the key in your view? Is finding good teachers? And how do you define what a good teacher is? And how did you find them for Harlem Children's Zone?
I mean, I think, Campbell, that you hit on a lot of the keys. I think all of us in education understand that your workforce, the people who produce the children are the teachers. And the ability to find good teachers and retain those teachers and make sure those teachers are delivering, I think, is the key to our schools getting better. Where you have systems that it is impossible to judge teachers because they won't allow you to use test data to even see if the teachers are good, just take our word for it, even though all the kids are failing, that's the kind of insanity that goes on in public education. Where, no matter how bad you are as a teacher, we cannot get rid of you. That, to me, is a travesty. And if the nation wasn't at stake, meaning if we don't educate these kids, we're going to drown in paying for jails and prisons, I'd say let that go. It's time for us to be sensible about this and do the right thing and say these simple reforms have to happen if we're going to improve education in America.
Bill, let me be more specific because I talked to you about this. I know the last time that you were on, the Rhode Island School District that had planned to fire all of their teachers. It was applauded by a lot of people, including the president. And then this week, we learned that those teachers are actually being kept on after making some concessions. I mean, does that prove, I guess, just how hard it is to make the kind of systemic change in the system that Geoffrey's talking about?
Yeah, it is. It is hard to make systemic change. We need a revolution. But yeah, there's always a letdown in these things. There always seems to be a disappointment. At the same time, the irony is there are a lot of very talented young people, such as people who apply to Teach for America. Many of them don't even make it, who are very talented, who would love to teach for 2 or 3 or 4 years before they move on to something else. We have to make it possible for more of our talent to be in our classroom, to be encouraged and rewarded in our classroom. And we've got to stop with the notion that I have heard 1,000 administrators say to me the hardest thing they had to do in their job was to get rid of an incompetent teacher. That's just crazy. It's just crazy. You don't stand for it. And airline pilots, nurses, doctors shouldn't stand for it with teachers.
Gentlemen, we're going to have to end it there. Geoffrey Canada, always good to have you here, and Bill Bennett as well. Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate it.